Hello! After analyzing the middle section from the Claude Debussy composition Fêtes, the second of his Nocturne, in this video musical elements from the original will undergo metamorphosis into this ambient texture and this funky piece for jazz big band. Let's see how this is achieved through a generalization approach. This video starts by revisiting the harmony in the Fêtes middle section. As it turns out, all chords can be obtained by chromatic alteration of a diminished seventh chord. Then I'll discuss a generalization approach to the harmony over a bass battle point technique. With a new expanded set of chords, we design a progression with added upper layer triads that may be interpreted as modal scales. The musical elements from the Debussy original will be reused in two short composition examples. We'll briefly return to the Fêtes original. Those who watched part 1 in the series will remember that the piece has multi-level ternary that is A-B-A structure. The middle section is based on the following musical elements: pedal point in the bass part, harmony in the lower layer, and, combined with upper layer triads, this yields polychords and modal scales. I showed how a tutti climax is achieved through orchestration. A detailed analysis of the full set of Nocturne is in my ebook on musical analysis, available in the webshop. This is the harmonic framework of the middle section. In the bass part, find the A-flat pedal point pitch. There are 3 subsections and the grand staff treble clef shows the set of 8 chords used in the progression. The result has a floating quality. I should mention that the pedal point technique presented here is rather different from the tonic or dominant pedal point in functional harmony. At some point I will discuss the latter in a separate tutorial. The framework is represented in this diagram with the pedal point pitch chordal function at the bottom. The pitch A-flat is either the root, 3, 5 or 7 of the 8 chords shown in the center. These are triads and 7 chords in thirds, and we find minor, major, dominant 7th and diminished or half-diminished chord types. And here's an interesting observation. All these chords may be derived from the diminished 7th chord on root A-flat by semitone stepwise motion of a single chordal function, which is illustrated in this pitch class diagram with the 12 chromatic scale pitch classes depicted as numbers on the clock face. The white circles are the 4 pitches in the A-flat diminished 7th chord. We hold the A-flat pedal point pitch fixed and then alter each of the 3 other chordal functions chromatically descending or ascending, which yields 6 more chords. We start by lowering the pitch B natural to B flat, which yields the B flat dominant 7th chord. Raising that pitch to C natural leads to the D half diminished chord. Applying the same modifications to the pitch D yields the D flat dominant 7th chord and the A flat minor 6 chord. Lowering the pitch F to E natural produces the E dominant 7 or the extended chord E dominant 9. And the final chord in the set used by Debussy is obtained by altering F to F sharp. Thus we have discovered the complete chord set of the Fêtes middle section harmonic framework through a most elegant mechanism. A progression with these floating harmonies, lacking cadential quality, has great potential for chromatic inner part motion, an aspect that will be used in the new compositions later in this video. In this section we'll expand the set of chord options over bass pedal point and include a wider range of chord types. For this generalization approach, we return to the diagram shown before. We keep the A-flat pedal point pitch, which now may be any chordal function. The chords may again be constructed in thirds, but we may also use extended and altered chords. Or we stack 2 triads to obtain a polychord, as shown on the right. Chord stability is controlled by moving along the horizontal axis, where we decide on either a root position chord or an inversion. Along the vertical axis I did my best to order the chord types in such a way that the chord tension level increases. Thus we have 2 degrees of freedom in chord progression design. Let's listen to this expanded set of chords over the bass pedal point, starting with the 5 options where A flat or its enharmonically equivalent G sharp is the root. We hear major, minor and 7th chord types. Next we look at the first inversion options, where the pedal point pitch is either the minor or major third in the chord. And here's the set of second inversion position chords in thirds, containing 5 options. We proceed with third inversion chords, with either minor or major 7th in the bass. Finally, here are 2 examples of dissonant 6-part polychords, obtained through a stacking of 2 triads. Through generalization, we have obtained a richer, expanded set of chords. Note that the diagram is incomplete. With a bit of experimentation you will discover other altered chords and polychords that fit into the scheme. Now it's time to move on to chord progression design, with the expanded set of options. Here is the tonads diagram that I will use as a tool to demonstrate the potential for creating Riemannian transformations by connecting 2 or more chords from our set. You may want to watch my 4-episode series on Riemannian transformations and chromatic medians on this channel. In summary, the tonads depicts major and minor triads in a network, with pitch classes at the nodal points. Compound Riemannian transformations connect chromatic medians and yield harmony systems with symmetrically distributed roots. These are visible as 2 diagonal axes in the tonads. One for the 4-root system that combines into a diminished 7th chord, and the other for the system with 3 roots, separated by 4 semitones. In addition, I've marked an example of a 3rd-order compound transformation from D minor to D flat major, centered around the chordal function 3, here the pitch class F. This is called the slide transformation. The pedal point pitch A flat is marked with a blue circle. Most Debussy chords lie in the dotted circle. And now I'll demonstrate the chromatic median options with the generalized chord set. Each option shown here as a path of colored triangles. We start with the connection of 3 major chord types with roots lying at 4 semitones apart, together forming an augmented triad. The example has smooth voice leading, mostly stepwise. For minor chords with roots at 3 semitone intervals yield this southwest to northeast axis. The closing chord may be labeled as sharp 9 or incomplete polychord. Here's another R3I option with minor chords. Below the staff I've labeled the pedal point chordal function. These chromatic medians have potential for chromatically moving voices. The tonads diagram is limited to triads, so the connection of 3 dominant 7th chord types at 4 semitones apart is depicted here as an approximation. The same holds for the 3 half-diminished chords shown here. And here's a set of inverted minor chords, one with major 7th. This example connects 2 major 7th chords with roots at 4 semitone intervals. We conclude with the chromatic median example with 3 minor chord types. In our toolbox we now have the expanded set of chords over the bass pedal point and the options for creating compound Riemannian transformations, plus a mechanism to control a tension level curve through the use of chord type and inversion position. So here's the example chord progression that will be the basis for the two example compositions. It starts identically to the Debussy original, but then I insert chromatic mediant and slide transformations, with more dissonant chords near the end. Listen to the audio rendering and read along with the annotations. With this chord progression, I'll create two example compositions in completely different styles. The common aspect is that both will apply the same set of musical elements from the Debussy original shown here. So we start with the bass part pedal point, above which we put a progression with chords from the expanded set. To each chord in the lower layer we add two upper layer triads. These may contain pitches from the lower chord or be more remote and yield polychords. Each triad pair is then interpreted as a modal diatonic scale. These upper layer elements are added to the given chord progression and are written in additional staves as shown here. The grand staff is the lower layer with bass part pedal point and basic chord in treble clef. The next higher staff shows the two triads in the upper layer, with the derived modal scale at the top. After applying this technique to the basic chord progression, the result is the following two-layer harmony setting. A 3-piano rendering, panned center, left and right, presents the full source material, now including new modal scales that were not used in the Debussy original. The pitch overlap between layers will be improved when we create instrumental forms in the example compositions. I'll summarize how Debussy implemented the musical elements in Fetes through orchestration. This was discussed in detail in part 1. The bass pedal point is played as an 8-note groove by harps, timpani and pizzicato lower strings. In the first subsection, the upper layer triads are played by muted trumpets, a characteristic sound that I will reuse. In the climax closing subsection, the lower layer chords are played as 8-note 16th note riffs in bassoons and horns. While the upper layer chords are set for 5 woodwinds, playing triplet patterns. Upper strings in parallel octaves play the modal scales, here Dorian and Mixolydian mode. Here you see the first metamorphosis of these elements in an ambient synthesizer-orchestral texture. First you'll hear the separate elements, then the full ensemble. The bass pedal point is set for pulsating synth bass, piano left hand and timpani. Two synthesizers play the upper layer modal scales in a combined instrumental form as stepwise scale and arpeggio patterns. Lower layer chords are set as sustained harmony for synthesizer pad and for French horn section. Here's a Debussy quote, the muted trumpets playing upper layer triads. The combination of lower and upper layer harmony yields a 6-part brass setting. And in this fragment, the lower harmony starts as electric piano arpeggio patterns, followed by sustained lower chords for synth, chords from both layers in piano, while solo violin plays a theme derived from the modal scales. The next fragment demonstrates another upper layer setting for synthesizers. Earlier I mentioned the potential for chromatic voice leading in this type of chord progression, a feature used here in the chromatically descending celesta. In the next phrase, the piano left hand plays pedal point, doubled with timpani. The right hand the lower layer chords as arpeggios, with upper layer scales for synthesizer. In this closing phrase we also hear 2 layers of brass instruments. And here's the final result that combines all previous musical elements. The same source material and musical ID may result in a completely different idiom, as I'll illustrate in this jazz big band funk style piece. Again, you'll hear individual elements first and then the full band. The synth bass returns, but now there's a prominent part for fretless bass guitar. The electric piano fills in the lower layer harmony, here as simple sustained chords. Again, it quotes from the Debussy original. In this fragment we hear the trombone section performing the lower layer chords. And here also is my inevitable episode error. In the reduced score these instruments should start one measure later, an error I've corrected in the companion booklet on my website. Instruments may play pitches from neighboring layers, as the piano chords demonstrate in the next fragment. The right hand plays the modal scales as stepwise ascending scales and descending arpeggios. Saxophones are using the same approach, playing pitches from both harmony layers, here in a 5-part sectional harmony setting that features a whole tone character. A well-known jazz big band technique are brass stabs, here as call and answer between muted trumpets and trombones. In the next fragment there's a build-up to an 8-part brass setting, again a combination of 2-layer harmony. The stepwise chromatic inner part potential is demonstrated in this unisono saxophone phrase that ends opening up into 5-part sectional harmony. The busy bass guitar, using plucking, slapping and harmonics, provides the pedal point but also uses pitches from the lower and sometimes also the upper layer harmony. These are also played as sustained piano chords, with the right hand again performing a quasi-ad-lib solo based on the modal scales. Brass steps return, but now as 8-part fortissimo accents and falls. The closing phrase for saxophones presents unisono scale patterns, then 5-part sectional harmony based on subsets from the lower and upper layer harmony. Listen to the combined musical elements in the full ensemble rendering. Part 2 in this series presents a generalization approach to the Debussy harmony over bass pedal point technique. We obtained an expanded set of chords and investigated its potential for creating Riemannian chromatic medians and a tension level curve. Based on that source material, we saw the metamorphosis of the Debussy musical elements, the pedal point, lower layer chords, upper layer triads and modal scales into new and different styles. This was demonstrated with 2 short example compositions. If this tutorial has inspired you to experiment with the techniques presented and you would like to be informed about future episodes, please subscribe to the channel. Although I'm sharing lots of freely available information, I do welcome support through PayPal donations, for which you'll see a link in the video description. Visit the website for companion material, more content and purchasing ebooks. Thanks for watching.